Well, I'd thought about giving it from a personal perspective, but actually at the end of the day, I decided to give a little presentation about the situations being experienced by young unemployed Spanish people. So concerns of the youth, but also concerns for the common good. I'm not going to give you a statistical or scientific approach to this. It's going to be more of a philosophical approach, partly because that's a personal choice, but also because I think we're going to have to think a bit differently about what things really mean if we're going to try to find solutions to them and find solutions in this way. Solutions are going to have to be based on intergenerational solidarity and based on a joint collective reflection about what kind of life we want to have. What's a dignified life, and what can we do to ensure that people have the opportunity to a correct level of living?
Para empezar, diré que como mucho...
I'd just start by saying that, as many of you know, the three main opportunities for the social system gives to young people is unemployment, short-term contracts, or exile. So talking about unemployment, it's true there is a systemic problem in our production system which is linked to early school leaving, and which is to do with certain strategic sectors which require different qualifications. Young people's unemployment in Spain has always been very high, but now I'd like to look at the difference now and how it suddenly increased from 2008 to 2012. In 2008, young people's unemployment was about 18.7%, and this year it's jumped to 40%, almost 50% recently. So what does all this mean? What's the meaning of this leap over these very few years? It means that we're doing something wrong. It must mean that there are certain aspects of the way in which the financial crisis is being handled from a political perspective, which are having a serious impact on young people employment. So from this perspective, as young people, we're quite critical towards the policies that are being enacted to tackle the crisis. And we're focusing mainly on three areas. There are three laws or three different policies which are being enacted at the moment, which we think are particularly harmful to us as young people. One is labour reform. That was adopted recently, because that says that's basically condemning us to permanent precarity in our work. The second is the reform of the pension system, because increasing the retirement age makes it more difficult for us to get to the labour market because there are fewer gaps on the market. And also it means that it leads to the commodification of public education. Also, we need to encourage training and education. So it's creating precarity for the majority. So talking about unemployment, that was then we have precarity. When we talk about precarity, it's a very fluid, vague idea. It's something that changes over time. And it's not just related to the labour situation, but it's also social and life in general. And then in labour terms, when we talk about precarity, there are certain criteria. First of all, it means there's a lack of long-term perspective in the labour market. There's a lack of joint representation of workers, a hostile environment, and fewer places for work, low income, lack of access to social protection, and a lack of protection against discrimination. These are criteria which characterize people who are experiencing precarious work. What about the social side? When we talk about it from a social perspective, we're referring to alienation from daily life. People who don't identify with future perspectives, with future plans, and lack of recognition for qualifications. So this means that Spanish young people of my generation are experiencing this precarity, and it's going to be taking on new meanings as it goes along. And then we have exile, or people basically leave. They go to Germany, for instance. If you look at the first half of 2012, about 40,000 young Spanish people have had to pack their cases and up and leave and go to another country. So first of all, the problem here is that often we don't want to leave our families, leave everything we know, and to go and try our fate in other countries that we don't know much about. We don't know what kind of rights we'll have, whether they'll be guaranteed. And also, because it tends to be the better educated people who leave, who's going to guarantee the social fabric is intact in Spain? So it's detrimental to Spanish society. So these are the three options to us, and they're all causing a lot of problems. We're hoping to reach some kind of joint solution. So these are the factors that come into play in our day-to-day life. Now I'd like to think a little bit about a rebellion. How youth as new social and political subjects can be a driver and the force between new struggles to encourage more social protection. I'd like to start by talking about what youth is. What does it mean to be young? What does youth mean? Youth is very charged with meaning. Under fascist regimes, youth was one of its symbols. They made it one of its symbolic focuses. Youth was linked to a permanently renewing nation, a nation which would be alive. Youth was seen as contradiction to decadence and corruption. The 1922 Italian national anthem was called Youth. Also, the Nazis had youth as their aesthetic model, where it was the fact to represent the fact that the empire would be permanent. But what happened to this invincible Nazi empire? It ended up by dying at the end of the Second World War. Now we have to look at youth, the new model, in light of capitalism. In the capitalist model, youth is seen as being the objective. Deterioration, being elderly, has never received such bad press. So millions of years euros, millions of dollars are wasted every year on products that aren't renewed, that aren't used. In Spain, every year, there are 400,000 plastic surgery operations every year. So this is quite symbolic of how youth has become the symbol of social success, of economic success, of self-esteem, of self-respect. Television, advertising is constantly telling us that youth reigns. The image of youth is a determining factor in success. Never before has youth been held up as an example. Everyone's looking to the youth. We have young actors, actresses, young models, young TV presenters. And yet, never has a social system treated us with such disdain before, with such a lack of respect. Never before have we had such poor future prospects. Now, youth has become a criteria rather than ideology. It's a criteria which defines us in anthropological and sociological terms. And we're very aware of the position that we occupy now as young people. We now have a system encouraging mass hedonism. We have cheap technology, cheap commodities. It's mass hedonism. If you compare us to the Arab Spring and the young people involved in the uprisings there, now we are focused more on, we're more interested in our iPods, on the television and cinema. So what I'm trying to say by this, a moment please, sorry. All this access to cheap consumerism has offset our feeling of rebellion and anger. So it means it's infantilizing us. It's infantilizing our minds and our bodies. If an adult wants to earn money, wants to buy a house, a car, to feed itself, a young person wants to be an adult. All children want is to grow up and become adults. And if you want to be an adult, that means you have to be free, be autonomous, have a dignified life, be able to defend your own ideas. That's what it means to be an adult. And that's what we need to find behind any kind of indignation or rebellion. So as young people, we have to move beyond this constant infantilization. We want to have autonomy, independence. We want to be able to have the power to make decisions about our own lives. And so in this context, we have to think as a group about what kind of life we want for young people, for old people, for everyone together, and what means we can use. Or perhaps at least what type of means we shouldn't be enacting, what type of means of measures are being used that are leading us to experience this precarity and infantilism at the moment. So I think there are just some areas for reflection, and thank you for listening.